Hello and welcome to another D3 plus 2 battle report, and yes, I know it's been a long time since I last did another one of these. It's because I am very busy with my main channel, which is what I do for a living, so these are going to be few and far between. I don't have much opportunities to get a battle in, let alone have time to paint right now actually. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about 1500 points of Good vs Evil, Chaos versus Space Marines. And let's go over the lists. So the Chaos side, Nurgle themed as per usual, but as a change of pace is being led by Be'lakor, the exceptionally overpriced, well, maybe not overpriced, but he's costly for what he has. Demon Prince with Eternal Warrior, he knows all of telepathy, psychic discipline, has a great roll set, he's a beast in melee. We're going to see how he performs today. Troops, that is 10 regular cultists, no upgrades. I'm just using the Plague Zombie models because they're painted. 5 Chaos Space Marines just for sitting on objectives, assuming we get an objective mission with Mark of Nurgle. Binky with his Hades autocannons and ectoplasm mouth. We have 3 Nurgle obliterators there. We have 4 Nurgle bikers, no upgrades. We have, is that 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Plague Marines, no upgrades. 4 Chaos Spawn with Mark of Nurgle. And finally we have Havocs. Although they're equipped with autocannons, they are actually being equipped with missile launchers for this match. The Space Marine side is being led by a custom Chapter Master with the Burning Blade, Shield Eternal and Artificer Armour. Troops, 5-man Scout Squad as you see them. 6-man Tactical Squad with Heavy Bolter because of point limitations. 6 Tactical Marines in a Rhino with no upgrades. 2 Dreadnoughts as you see them, so that is 2 autocannons. And a twin-link glass cannon and missile launcher on this one. Then we have 3 Devastator Centurions. They have brought a Land Raider as a dedicated transport. They're equipped with grav amps and Omniscope. I've forgotten the name of it. The one the sergeant can take so he can do whatever it is that he can do. And finally, as an allied detachment, the Vindicare Assassin. I am so glad that you can now take these again in a Space Marine army. He's been sitting on my shelf for a long time, which is why he's got a overly large decorative base as opposed to his normal one. That doesn't impart cover, don't worry, it won't be cheating like that. Oh, and they have missile launchers, not hurricane bolters. So anyway, we'll be back in a second with deployment and mission type. And here we are at deployment. We got Hammer and Anvil for the deployment type, and we got Purge the Alien as the mission with no night fighting on turn 1. Space Marines won the roll-off and opted to go first, or deploy first, which means they go first, whatever. So we'll have a look at the Space Marine deployment line here. Land Raider up front with the Centurions and the Chapter Master inside, with the Rhino with the 1 Tactical Marine squad behind them. One of the Dreadnoughts here as well. The Scouts are hiding down here. The Vindicare Assassin is probably just going to perch himself up there with a good line of sight on the rest of the battlefield for the entire match, assuming he doesn't die. The lower 2 floors of the building have the other Tactical Squad, and the other Dreadnought is there. There's nothing in reserves. So if we go over here for the Chaos side now, the Havocs have deployed inside that ruin. They are a bit exposed, but it's right at the cusp of their deployment line, and it's a good line of fire on everything coming. Binky is behind here as well. Be'lakor has opted not to start in reserves to come on flying. He's opted just to start on the board so he can start casting straight away. Plus he's hidden, so it's very unlikely he's going to get shot at by much, if anything, on Space Marine turn 1. Now because it's Purge the Alien, unfortunately, not an objective game, the cultists are hiding back here to go to ground as need be to get some cover saves, because now they're a liability. Plague Marines are hiding behind, probably to get buffed by Be'lakor depending on how things go. The Obliterators have deployed within this forest, which is just going to count as a cover save. I'm not doing any of the special rules from the rulebook. The Spawn are behind them. The 5-man Chaos Marine squad is hiding behind the bikes, and it looks like the bikes want to just go up the outside edge there. So with that, we are going to see now if Chaos is going to steal the initiative. He did not, so... Oh, and also before we go into Space Marines turn 1, Warlord traits. Be'lakor has a set one which isn't relevant against Space Marines because it affects fear tests, which Space Marines don't take. And the Space Marines got the Imperium Sword, which means that the Chapter Master and his squad can get Furious Charge for a turn. So might be relevant depending on how things go. Anyway, let's go to turn 1. End of Space Marine turn 1. The Land Raider moved up with the Rhino using it for shelter. This Dreadnought, I think, largely stayed the same. The Scouts didn't move, neither did the Vindicare or the entrenched Tactical Squad over there. The other Dreadnought, however, did move to the maximum of its movement to fire down the line at the bikes. But to start with, the Land Raider fired its heavy bolter into the Havocs, managed to kill one, I think. Then Power of the Machine Spirit used the side last cannon there to fire at the Obliterators. Luckily the Obliterators were Mark of Nurgle, because otherwise it would have killed the closest one outright, but instead it just dealt a wound. However, then the Vindicare fired the 2+ wounding sniper shot and finished off the closest one. Their morale held, however. The Havocs also took a wound from sniper fire, and I can't remember if it was the snipers or the other Dreadnought, but they both fired at the Havocs. Their morale also held. Finally, the other Dreadnought, the twin-linked autocannon Dreadnought, fired down here at the bikes, took out the closest one. Their morale held. So there was some casualties on the Chaos side. The Space Marines have bloodied their nose. Nobody broke, nobody ran though, and there was no first blood. So now we are going to move into the first Chaos turn. It's a bit early in the game for bad luck to be rearing its head, but unfortunately it did for Chaos due to a number of things that happened. Anyway, the Cultists stayed still, the Plague Marines moved up, as did Binky, to get some line of sight. Vindicare flew over the building, but we'll get to that in a second. The Obliterators stood still to fire from the safety of having a cover save. The Spawn ran up to get line of sight blocking cover there. I'm not sure what they're going to do yet. And the Chaos Space Marines here just kind of moved up and ran. The bikes moved up and then also turbo boosted this turn to get a bit closer and give themselves a better cover save, because they're going to need to jink on the next turn, almost certainly. Anyway, in the Psychic phase, 2 power dice were rolled, so that means the Space Marine side only had 2, but then Vindicare adds 3 to the Chaos side. Tried for invisibility, got it, however also perilled. The peril result was a 2, which means he takes a wound with no saves allowed, so he's down to 3 wounds, unfortunately. And you also have to randomly forget one of your psychic powers, so he no longer has mental fortitude from the telepathy tree. He does have invisibility though, so that means he can only be snapshotted next turn, and also in hand to hand he is hit on 6s only. Which is, well, considering how high his weapon skill is anyway, that's probably not that big a deal. But anyway, the Forge Fiend fired its ectoplasm cannon. It got hot, luckily saved from taking a hull point, but it was going to be on the Land Raider, did nothing. Vindicare charged, successfully made it. Despite having Armor Bane and being Strength 7 with his Demon Forged weapon, the pen rolls, the 2 dice for armor penetration, they were awful, and the only thing that got through was 1 glance. So the Land Raider is free to move around him or potentially attack him next turn. And that's it. All that was done to the Space Marine side was a hull point. Oh, and also, this hull point on the Rhino was done by the Obliterators using las cannons from over there. They could just about see enough of him to make that shot. But they rolled pretty badly as well. 1 missed outright. And then the damage table roll was pretty bad too. But anyway, yes, that's Chaos turn 1. So now we'll go on to Space Marines turn 2. End of Space Marine turn 2, and some interesting stuff happened this turn. Let's start with the Land Raider moving up. It had to move past Vindicare, so it made a dangerous terrain roll and was fine. It's just kind of perched up there. Now this is where a little bit of a Rose dilemma comes in, because I've separated the Devastator Centurions there from the Chapter Master so that the Chapter Master could go have an epic duel with Vindicare. We'll get to that in a second. When you start a turn, if an independent character moves away from the unit it's joined to, it is now a separate unit again, and they're free to move separately and act separately. Does that still work if they both started inside a vehicle at the start of the turn? Because you can still leave the vehicle via separate doors to be separated. So is there a specific rule that says whether that's possible or not possible? And if not, what is the general consensus on whether you can do that? Because if you can't do that, then what happened in the turn shouldn't have happened, because the Centurions stood their ground there and used their grav amps and grav cannons to easily strip Binky the Forge Fiend of all his hull points and wrecked him. So he's now just a wreck sitting there blocking part of the way to the far end of the table there. The Land Raider itself fired its heavy bolter at the Havocs, did nothing, because I believe it was the Dreadnought that did the 1 or 2 wounds that's still there. Their morale held anyway, so there's still the 2 at the back there. The Power of the Machine Spirit shot the last cannon into one of the other Obliterators, did 1 wound to it. Then the Vindicare Assassin up there at the back end of the building over there fired his round, whatever it's called, that wounds on 2+, and finished off another Obliterator. So far, the Vindicare hasn't made his points back, but if he does just a little bit more, he will have. Although he is kind of taking other people's kills, as it were, because he's finishing off Obliterators rather than doing all the wounds himself. But anyway, oh, the Rhino moved up, just hoping to make a bit more ground before the last hull point gets stripped, essentially. And this Dreadnought and the Tactical Marines all shot into the bikes to absolutely no effect, unfortunately. But anyway, the combat happened. The Chapter Master made his charge. He used his Warlord trait, so he had Furious Charge this turn also. Now, Bellicor had invisibility, so the Chapter Master was only hitting on 6s. He still managed to get 1 wound through, so Bellicor is now down to 2 wounds. Bellicor got to swing first because he's a Demon Prince and is super fast, but because of the 3+ invulnerable, as thanks to the Shield Eternal, Chapter Master didn't take any damage, also did the roll for the incandescent roll of the Burning Blade, and he didn't take a wound from that. Bellicor is fearless, so that challenge is ongoing. One of them will eventually fall. And that's it for Space Marine turn 2. First blood has been dealt in the form of Binky the Forge Fiend, and there's an additional point for just killing the unit itself. So now we'll see what Chaos can do in retaliation as we go into their turn 2. Quick addition, totally forgot to mention, the final Obliterator's morale broke, so he is now running. He's basically gone, which is a massive blow. Turn 2 was a mixed bag for Chaos. The Plague Marines moved up and round Binky's corpse. Havoc stood still, as did the Cultists. The Obliterator here failed to regroup, and he has actually run off the table. I just left him there so that I would remember to cover that he is now gone. So the Obliterators, they're gone. They are casualties of war. The Chaos Spawn moved up and made an easy charge into the Centurions. However, they were unable to get past the 2+ save. That said, the Centurions are also really bad in hand-to-hand combat, so I think it was smart getting them tied up for probably the rest of the game unless something else helps them out. So no casualties on either side, despite having Rage on the Spawn's side and also rolling for 4 attacks each for their number of attacks. But there you go. The Chaos Space Marines over there moved up and ran 1 inch for a second turn in a row. The bikes also turbo boosted again because they're just hoping to get into the back lines to cause a bit of trouble at this point, I think. The single Havoc remaining with his missile launcher up there easily took out the last hull point of the Rhino and wrecked it, so the Space Marines inside had to disembark, and they are right where you see them there. In the ongoing combat between the Chapter Master and Bellicor, I forgot to mention, in the Psychic phase, 1 power die was rolled. Bellicor once again did invisibility, this time didn't Perils thankfully, so he still has invisibility. So despite hitting on 6s for a second round of combat in a row, the Chapter Master still managed to deal 1 more wound, so Bellicor is down to 1 wound. In return, or rather before the Chapter Master got to do that, Bellicor swung and managed to get 1 wound through the 3+ invul shield of the Chapter Master, and he of course has Eternal Warrior, so there's no insta-death. Also, this time, the blind effect of the Burning Blade took effect on Bellicor, I think. Because he has such high initiative, as I understand it, there's still a critical fail state for initiative tests, even if you have a ridiculously high initiative, so if I've done that right, he is indeed blinded next turn. So they're both hitting each other on 6s in the Space Marine turn as we go into that now, I believe, because there's nothing else to cover, I think. Yep, okay, Space Marine turn 3. End of Space Marine turn 3. The Dreadnoughts both moved in together to do a pincer movement on the Chaos Bikers. They shot at them first, didn't actually manage to get any hits. And then in the charge phase, we'll just get straight to that, or in the assault phase rather, they charged. This Dreadnought failed the charge, this Dreadnought made it, however actually failed to do anything. That 4 is not supposed to be there, it means nothing. The squad leader of the Chaos Bikers did however get sniped by the Vindicare Assassin up there. Also the Space Marines in the building here did shoot at the Bikers and also didn't do anything because they jinked, I forgot to mention that. But the Sergeant did die, their morale did hold, but now they're locked in combat. They can't actually hurt the Dreadnought, so it's just going to be a case of how many turns it takes the Strength 6 base Dreadnought, because he doesn't have a close combat weapon, to hurt the Toughness 6 Bikers. So they could be stuck there for a little while, the rest of the game, who knows? Which is the story for a lot of what else is happening. The Land Raider passed the Dangerous Terrain test again and didn't get mobilised and moved across this scenery a bit more. Fired the last cannons at the Havoc, or last cannon rather, at the Havoc Sergeant, who survived thanks to cover. The Heavy Bolter fired at the 1 Chaos Space Marine he could just about see and didn't do a wound. Saves were made. The Tactical Marines here, they moved up and ran towards this building here. The last Havoc armed with a missile launcher was killed by a sniper shot from the scouts, not the Vindicare obviously. In this combat, almost nothing happened. The Centurions managed to deal 1 wound to one of the Spawn. The Spawn in return couldn't get through the 2+ save again, so they're stuck there. And finally, the ongoing duel between the HQs. It was a bad one. They both whiffed each other. Well, actually, Bellicor got wounds through, it's just that the 3+ invul saved him. The Chapter Master, thanks to invisibility this turn, just didn't land any hits at all, so Bellicor is still on 1 wound. And now we're going to go into Chaos turn 3, and if Bellicor doesn't get invisibility off, or does a peril at the same time, this could well be over. At the end of Chaos turn 3, it does look like the Chaos side is just suffering a very slow death at this point. However, things are going on. The Plague Marines opted to head in the other direction now to try and cut off the Tactical Marines making their way around, so they also did a run move. The Havoc Captain opted just to stay hiding there because it's his best shot for surviving at this point. The Chaos Marines just moved up and are moving their way across, potentially to help out the Chaos Spawn, who once again, they weren't ineffective this time. They dealt 1 wound to one of the Centurions. In return, the Centurions also dealt 1 more wound, so one of the Spawn is down to their final wound. There was no shooting at all, now that I think about it. No, none at all. In the combat between the Bikes and the Dreadnought, the Bikes obviously can't hurt the Dreadnought's front armour. The Dreadnought in return managed to whiff and did nothing. So in the combat that matters, or rather, to cover the interesting psychic phase first, 5 power dice each, so that gave Bellicor 5, 6, 7, 8 in total. He opted to roll just over half of those to try and get invisibility. He did, without a perils. Space Marines rolled every single power dice they had to try and deny it, and they succeeded, so there is no invisibility, which meant the Chapter Master was hitting Bellicor on 4s rather than 6s because he's weapon skill 6. But he rolled badly, annoyingly. No wounds got through. Well, he got 2 actually, but Bellicor saved them with his 4+ invul. In return, Bellicor again couldn't get through the 3+ invul on the Shield Eternal, so that was a stalemate of a round. They did not manage to hurt each other. The Burning Blade also did not hurt the Chapter Master again. So that combat is still ongoing, and that is about it for the Chaos side. They couldn't really do anything. As I say, they are just dying slowly at this point. However, we'll see if things end then as we go into Space Marines turn 4. End of Space Marine turn 4, and the Chapter Master is victorious. Sorry to skip ahead to the assault phase, but that's the most important thing. He has slain Bellicor. He did take 1 wound before slaying him though, so he's down to 2, and then he consolidated 1, and she's going to go help out the Centurions. And in that fight, 1 Spawn went down, 1 Centurion went down, so it was a draw. But now that they're going to get a Chapter Master to back them up, things are probably going to turn around pretty swiftly over there. This combat was a stalemate as well, and the shooting, there wasn't really much shooting to be possible, so that's why I didn't really focus on it. This Dreadnought opted not to join the combat with the Bikes to fire at the Space Marine down here. I believe he killed 3 of them, and then also the Vindicare Assassin picked off the Sergeant just for something to kill. So in total, the Vindicare has taken out 2 Obliterators, the Sergeant of that squad, and also one of the Havocs, I think. There is something else. Other than that, this tactical squad moved around, and the ones that could see anyway fired onto the Plague Marines. Also, I forgot to mention that the Tactical Doctrine was used this turn just for the sake of it because it was forgotten about until now. So they were re-rolling all misses, and they managed to get through Feel No Pain, etc. to kill 2 of them, but they're fearless. And other than that, oh yeah, the Havoc Sergeant was obliterated by Power of the Machine Spirit last cannon off the side of the Land Raider there. Oh, that's who did the other wound to that squad there, yeah, the heavy bolter fired into them. So Chaos is basically lost at this point, it looks like. I'm going to do 1 more turn anyway, just in case, for some reason, if the Chapter Master joins that combat, that he dies somehow. It's very unlikely that he will. Plus it's actually Chaos turn next, so it doesn't look like they're going to come back from it, but we'll see. We'll do Chaos turn 4 and see what happens. And here we are at the end of Chaos turn 4, and I think it's time that we just decide to end this, because the Chaos are not going to win at this point regardless of how the rest of things goes. There's physically nothing that can shoot at the Chapter Master, so if you were playing to win, just don't put him in the combat with the Chaos Spawn and he would be safe. So there's basically nothing Chaos can do at this point. But I did do the combat here. None of the Centurions were hurt, and 2 wounds were dealt to one of the Spawn. The Plague Marines fired their pistols, as did the Cultists, the auto pistols in their case, into the Space Marines and did nothing. They then charged and also did nothing in combat. They took no damage in return, but that's really irrelevant. And the Dreadnought and the Bikes were at a standstill again. So a lot of points for the Space Marine side. They got First Blood, they got Slay the Warlord, they took out Binky, they took out the Obliterators, they took out the Havocs. They didn't take out this squad because the Survivor was a wimp and hid behind there, but that's not really important. As on the Chaos side, they took out the Rhino, and that's it. So it was a bad mashup of lists. It was just put together hastily because there was some units I wanted to try, Bellicor and the Vindicare Assassin, to see how they would perform. So that's going to do it for this battle report. I hope you enjoyed. Please like the video if you did indeed like it, and subscribe to see when another one goes up. They're few and far between because I don't have a lot of time to film these, because I have a mainstream gaming channel that you'll see linked on this channel page, which I do full time, so unfortunately that has to take priority. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. If you want to see particular armies or lists go up against each other, I don't care if they're silly or not, as long as I have the models, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Ta-ta for now.